Welcome to Nursing Burnout and Moral Distress Workshop. My name is Sandra Payne, and I am a nurse in British Columbia, Canada, and have been a nurse for about 15 years now. I am so honored to be with you here today to share in this critically important conversation. When I started nursing all those years ago, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. The preparation for what this profession entails is not sufficient to equip us mentally, emotionally, or physically for what it will require of us. I was early into my career when I first noticed the signs that things were spiraling downward. But because I wasn't prepared, I didn't have language for it, I didn't know how to speak about what I was going through, and it most definitely was not encouraged or talked about. So I figured that it was just a me problem. I was just not cut out for this type of nursing, which at the time I was working in the NICU. I was exhausted. I was extremely emotionally triggered, overwhelmed with sadness and anger, and eventually became quite withdrawn, apathetic, disconnected, and miserable. At the time, though, I didn't recognize this as burnout. I just took it on my heart as a personal flaw. It was a weakness and a failure of my own. And I left the NICU to see if it was, if I could find greener grass somewhere else. And it definitely was better elsewhere at first. And in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I left the NICU at that time, because the trajectory of where I was headed, had I stayed, is rather grim and scary to even think about. And even though I found a greater balance in other roles, that pain and the grief and the anxiety, the depression and the trauma that I was carrying, it continued to follow me throughout my career. I eventually landed in community nursing, where I really shined, doing what I love in program development, in teaching, and helping people to create sustainable changes in their lifestyle. And well, I shined when I was permitted to shine. But time and time again, resources were pulled, budget was reallocated to other areas. It was leaving prevention strategies and all the levels that I was working stripped and very scarce. And it just clearly was not a priority in our healthcare system. Helping people truly to heal and to deal with the stress and trauma in their lives was just not what working in our system was about, and it still isn't. And this is just one example, but the nursing profession is full of examples of nurses experiencing the same internal struggle, holding the ethical standard of care that we have for ourselves as professionals, all while seeing the pain and suffering of our patients and desiring to provide them what we feel and what we believe they need. But yet, because of so many systemic reasons, poor staffing being the main one, but also policies, budget, lack of resources, poor communication, bullying, incompetent colleagues, etc. It leaves us unable to provide the care that we want to give and that we believe we should be giving. And this is devastating to us on so many levels. This is what I now understand as moral distress, and what I truly believe is the real problem that is deep rooted in nursing. And they don't talk about it. They don't tell us about it. I know that everyone here can resonate with this internal conflict of knowing and deeply desiring to care for people in the ways we would want to be cared for, the ways that we would want our family members to be cared for, in the ways that we standardize ourselves to provide care, in the ways that we know people deserve. But being in the unhealthy workplaces that you are, being unsupported, under-resourced, you're unable to do so. And then when you couple that with the fear of protecting our licenses in these environments, it's a recipe for complete breakdown. What I see now from this outside lens, from this perspective that I have in the work that I do, and from the years of my own personal healing and reflecting in my own life, is that when someone labels us, or we label ourselves burned out, it's like a stake of shame that we take right into our hearts. It's our fault. We are unable to manage. We are unequipped mentally, emotionally, physically. We are the failures. We are weak. We are not good enough. With the language of moral distress, however, it gives a whole new understanding to our internal source of conflict and pain and suffering that is actually empowering, because what becomes illuminated for us is that we have a choice. Honestly, though, the language of all of it can be quite overwhelming in and of itself. In fact, when you look at moral distress, burnout, compassion fatigue, there is significant overlap, and it can be quite confusing as to which one maybe you land in. And maybe you land in all of them. As well, when we add in the potential of secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma, and PTSD, that are all significant realities of nursing today, it just makes it so much more confusing. There is devastating risk in our mental and emotional well-being as a nurse that is downplayed and is definitely not discussed or taught in nursing school. Having a common language to use can be helpful for us as professionals to get a clear picture of what symptoms and indicators are present for us, and also to what degree of distress we're experiencing. And it can be helpful for the practitioners who we are seeking to help guide us, and also to help explain and to use the language that they are used to that can help them to make decisions, especially if you are starting to navigate the insurance system. Language is really important. But all that being said, from what I have found in the reading that I have done and my experience working with nurses, is that no matter what the diagnosis or the label that we use to describe what we're going through, with the somewhat exception of PTSD, what we need as far as care is the same. So as professionals, we can utilize assessment tools such as the moral distress scale, the moral distress thermometer, the professional quality of life scale, the symptoms of stress self-assessment, all the papers. We think about our patients, all the papers that we hand them. There's the same kind of papers for us, and I will provide those to you in a recap email so that you have those for you. But really, it's about finding the language and really finding clarity about where you're at and to what degree you're experiencing these challenges and these symptoms, and it can help you to move forward in finding the resources and the supports that you need. So in 2018, I was at a crossroads. Returning from my last maternity leave, I knew that going back and continuing to have the wind sucked out of my sails, continuing to abandon my values and my beliefs was so out of alignment with where and what I knew I could be doing for the wellness of the people that I desired to serve, that I made the very terrifying but also exciting decision and stepped away from traditional nursing. Coming to this conclusion was not easy, and I know that possibly you may be in a similar place, recognizing the damaging impact that nursing has created and will continue to create on your mental, your emotional, and your physical health. And just even knowing that is a heavy burden to carry. To sit with this internal struggle of how long do I sacrifice myself for this job? How much more can I take? How much more can I give? But also with the fear and the uncertainty of moving on. Where do I go from here? How do I even figure it out? Am I good enough to start over? What will that even look like? And how will I get there? The stress and the anxiety that piles up, even just contemplating leaving behind the security of this career, I so get it. And then you add in the grief and the loss that comes with it. When I left my nursing role, I didn't give up serving and helping people, because that's a significant part of my identity. It's who I am at my core, as it is yours. And I wasn't willing to surrender that, or I wasn't willing to let the trauma and the injury of nursing take that passion from me. Making the decision to leave, it took me a long time. And this is actually a really important part of making these decisions, is taking our time to navigate the grief, to navigate the loss and the confusion and the fear and the anxiety. It might be the most important part of making changes in our life. And it's also a part that many nurses haven't been afforded in these past months, as they've been wrongfully fired for their beliefs and their choices. But that's a topic for a whole other conversation. But I just want you to know that if you are one of them, that I have not forgotten what's happened. After I decided to leave my permanent position in nursing, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. It was one of the biggest and also one of the most empowered decisions I've ever made, but also one of the scariest. I was leaving behind, as many of this has, been floating in your mind, to leave the security of my benefits and my guaranteed income. And I knew if I was to go back, I would be sacrificing so much more. I stayed on as a casual, as most nurses do if we're given the chance. And one of my first shifts back in the clinic, I had a full-blown panic attack. If I wasn't completely convinced that I needed out before that, I definitely was after it. I knew deep down that I was worth more than what nursing was giving to me, that my health and my well-being was not a sacrifice to be made, that there was another way for me to live this purpose of wanting to help and heal people. This idea of coaching had been crossing my field for some time, even while I was still nursing and working in chronic disease. And I was often finding myself being pulled towards the aspects of that work that we're teaching and helping my clients to create changes in their life, as well as program development. I was passionate. When I talked about stress and emotions, the topics that the other nurses ran from, I was digging in. That is where I wanted to really spend time with people. And so I took that and I started doing some digging and some research, and I ended up enrolled to become a holistic wellness coach. I enrolled with the International Association of Wellness Professionals, and I'm now a certified master coach with the IWP, and I help to train new coaches entering this field. In 2020, I could see the writing on the walls really early on. I mean, nursing was hard enough. Our healthcare system has been a disaster for a long time. And as nurses, we have been unsupported and dismissed and abused for decades. But then we added in a pandemic, and with it, the high bar of standards we already held for ourselves got even higher, with intense and unrealistic expectations, the constant changes, poor leadership. Any sense of control and predictability we might have felt before was stripped away and replaced with fear, anxiety, and uncertainty, as well as further isolation of our struggles and our suffering, because we were glorified as heroes. And heroes don't struggle. Heroes are Teflon. They can do anything and they keep bouncing back. But I could feel the stress, as you all could too, and the emotional overwhelm rising like a tidal wave. I could feel how shaky that ground was, how unsustainable this was. And then I started to watch nurses, my friends, my past colleagues starting to drop, injured, exhausted, angry, and worse. And I could see, in fact, that this crisis that we were facing globally was pushing every problem in all of our systems, but particularly healthcare, to the surface. And everyone working in it was pushing them right to the edge. And then it hit me. Well, actually, someone hit me with it, but it sounded something like this. Sandra, you know full well the psychological and moral distress that nursing holds. You talk about your experience with this all the time. And here you are, having gone through your own intensive healing process over the years. This is it. This is where you land. I heard her, and that was something like what she said, because I used language like that because I was just learning about my own injuries in nursing as well. And when she said those words to me, it was like I heard it and I felt it, but I resisted because I was scared. The biggest thought was, who the fuck am I to step into this, to step up in this way? But I couldn't deny it. I felt so magnetically called to step up and do something in this new role as a wellness coach. And it was time to table my lingering self-doubt and my fear, and to rise up and show up for all of you. And so I did, and I did what I always did best in my nursing career. I took all the tools, exercises, and practices I had learned in my personal journey, and all that I had collected from the programs and the teachers that I had found along the way, and I created a holistic program exclusively for nurses. And I call this program Nurse RX. There's some people here today too who have been a part of it. Stepping into this role as a support and a guide for the hundreds of nurses whose lives I've touched over the last couple of years has been anything short of heart-wrenching, but also extremely humbling and gratifying, knowing that I have become a safe place for nurses to land, that I am helping and guiding the people who are struggling and suffering so greatly, and I'm doing it in my fullest capacity. It is truly an honor to show up for you, and I want you all to know as well that my intentions are not unrealistic. I know we're not going to fix all the problems you're facing, or even find solutions to half of the challenges that are acutely confronting you. My intentions in the work I do for nurses, in addition to offering, of course, practical tools, exercises, and suggestions, is also to offer one of the most profound healing opportunities that I have ever accessed and that I believe any human being can access, especially right now. And that is authentic presence, community, caring, compassion, empathy, and unwavering, unconditional support. That shared human connection comes through our stories and through our pain and our success. That is a powerful vulnerability and a truth that opens up the doors to rebuild hope and to find acceptance of where we're at, and can help to quiet the fear, the doubt, the judgment, and the shame that we all live with. One thing that's clear to me as I witness the suffering and the pain of nurses every day is that none of you are alone in what you're going through. What's abundantly clear is that as a collective, we are suffering in a great deal of pain, struggling and unsure of what to do next, feeling hopeless, helpless, exhausted, overwhelmed, and powerless. This wave that feels like it's crushing us, we are all feeling it. It may have different shades for each of us. We may hold different beliefs, different values, and different fears, but we are all, as a shared humanity, as a shared human experience, we are all feeling the weight of the collective trauma that is attempting to get our attention. And it's doing a pretty damn good job of it. My story that I share is really, it's a hero's journey. And the hero in my story, as it is in each of your stories, is always ourselves. The hero's journey is like a map of how we go from a place where we fully recognize that we need to change something in our life, and then the different phases we go through as we seek that change. It's yet to be written. I would wager a guess that many of us are in a place where we see very clearly that our life is not going the way we believe it's intended to. We are in a phase of struggle, and we recognize that this is not how we want our life to continue. This internal calling, or the signals that we receive that tell us that things are not going the way they're supposed to, that things are out of alignment in your life, this call is often ignored many times over. And maybe you can acknowledge right now that you have known that things are not going well for you for quite some time. Our body is constantly communicating with us, and those little signals show up for all of us when something is out, when something is misaligned. The problem is that we ignore them, we push them away, or we numb them out, trying to turn down the volume of the different symptoms and signals that are showing up for us. We tell ourselves soon because it's not a good time right now. We strive to meet the expectations of the various roles we play in life while dismissing the needs of ourselves. It's unsustainable. Most will either ignore these signals until you hit rock bottom and your body forces you to listen, or somebody comes into your life who opens the door, who offers hope, who offers a chance, and who offers some guidance and support, and you just happen to find the courage to walk through that. I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And if it doesn't feel comfortable, you can just gaze down at the table or the floor. But wherever you're at, as you're seated there, I invite you to imagine in your mind's eye that you are standing at the edge of a large canyon. As you stand there at the edge, you can feel everything that we just walked through. The hopelessness and despair, the pain, the fear, the anxiety, the anger and frustration, the sadness. You feel this weight that is dragging you and weighing you down. And as you look up across the canyon, you can't quite see what's over there, but there's a light, and it is pulling you in. It is calling to you. It is saying to you, there is something better for you. You are not meant to experience your life this way. And you feel this magnetic pull. And then you look down at the canyon as you see this wide, deep, dark, scary journey that would be ahead if you were to get to the other side. It feels impossible. It feels hopeless. But this little part inside of you that I know you hear tells you to go for it, tells you it's time. It's time to do something different. And so you take that step off of that canyon wall and you start to scale down the edges. And as you take each step in front of you, it's just as scary, it's just as daunting, it's just as difficult as you thought it was going to be. You fall, you get hurt, you feel sad, you feel angry, you feel all the things that you've been avoiding feeling. But as you continue down that canyon wall, you discover that if you take breaks, if you listen to yourself, if you nourish yourself, that you can get through it, that you can make it down. And you continue going until you reach the bottom. When you get to the bottom, it's cold, dark, you feel alone, you feel worried about where to go next. You've come so far, you can look back and see. And as you look ahead, all you see is darkness, and you're unsure what to do, where to go. The base of this canyon is where all of your fears live. It's where all of your self-doubt, your limited beliefs, your trauma, your pain, it's all down here. Just when you're thinking, I can't do this, you feel a warm presence beside you. And that presence links arms with you and shines the light as you navigate the base of this canyon, as you face the shadows. And when you get to the other side of the canyon and you place your hands on the wall, you feel this overwhelming blanket of hope that has been rebuilt not by magic, by you and your willingness to take action, your willingness to face what's in front of you. And with this blanket of hope empowering you, propelling you forward, you start to climb out. And the climb out is not as difficult as it was getting in. You still make missteps, slip, but you recenter, you grab the next rock and you keep climbing out. And when you get to the top and you pull yourself out and you're standing there in that light, basking in all of its warmth, its comfort, and you recognize how far you've come, how much you've gone through, how powerful and brave you are. And you look around and you see more and more canyons around you. But instead of feeling scared or anxious or afraid, you feel excited because you know you can do it. You've proven to yourself and you feel that hope, you feel that motivation, you feel that empowerment coursing through your body, and you're ready for it. You're excited for what will come. You're excited for what opportunities lie within each of those self-discovery canyons. Before you open your eyes, I invite you just to take a few breaths and just really allow yourself to feel what it's like to stand there in that light. Notice what your body feels like. And take a couple deep breaths, taking your time or just staying with your eyes closed if that feels best for you as well. My journey, just like yours, has been my whole life. I spent most of it in a dark depression. I took awful medications that both saved my life, but also kept me from truly living it. I spent all those years thinking I was worthless, thinking I was nothing, that I was unimportant, that I didn't matter. I had nothing unique and nothing special to offer. I spent my life molding myself and editing myself to fit into what I thought I needed to be accepted, to belong, to feel like I was good enough. I spent all those years striving for perfection, meanwhile, every day feeling like I would never measure up. I hid who I truly was because of the shame that I was not good enough the way that I was, that there was something wrong with me. And somehow I was personally a failure. Somehow I was a flaw. I hid the truth of my struggle, as many of us do. Women are quite good at hiding our struggle. I hid because of the shame and because of the intense guilt that reared its ugly face and would remind me anytime I started thinking that maybe I deserved better, maybe there was something more, maybe I wasn't seeing the full picture, when that little voice would spark up inside of me and try to propel me to do something different, that guilt and that shame would show up. And it would remind me, you should be grateful for everything you have. How dare you ask for more? How dare you even think for a moment that you're worth more, that you deserve more? The guilt and shame have been a prison for me my whole life. And nursing padlocked the doors even further. Does that resonate for you? Do you feel like you're living behind bars of shame, believing that you're falling short of some expectation, like you're not good enough, a failure in some way? What about the bars of guilt that tell us we should be grateful? At least you have a job. At least you can provide for yourself and your family. At least you have a family. Or the guilt that others are depending on us. What about your patients? What about your coworkers? What about your families? It's selfish to look after yourself when so many others are struggling too. What about the comparison? Our pain isn't that bad. Other people have it so much worse. All of this compounds. It's no wonder we don't talk about it. So you might be wondering, how does this relate to nursing? It's related because the culture of nursing fuels this shame and the guilt that many of us have become prisoners to. And the fear that exists in this profession makes it worse. I certainly became a prisoner of it. We go about our careers as nurses striving to meet these ideal expectations, to fit the mold of a good nurse who should be strong enough to handle everything, someone who can just roll with whatever's coming through the door, not be shaken, definitely not be shattered by anything we witness or experience. We strive every day to put on this Teflon superwoman coating where nothing gets to us. We're not emotionally impacted. We're like robots, but yet we still need to be empathetic. We still need to sit with people in their darkest moments, in their deepest pain, and feel with them. But we're not allowed to let that feeling affect us because that's weak. We're supposed to have our hearts wide open and be there for people, but not supposed to let any emotion in or out. And we work in this kind of ridiculous, unreasonable, unrealistic, and quite frankly, impossible expectations every day. It leaves us riddled with these feelings of unworthiness, hopelessness, and shame. And the stigma that still exists in nursing around mental and emotional health is a powerful barrier to us acknowledging and speaking the truth of this pain, as we fear being labeled, right? We fear being labeled as that nurse, the weak nurse, the one that's not cut out for it. We fear the bullying, the shame, and the stigma. And so we suffer in silence. There are thousands of nurses who are suffering, but only a handful ever take action to get help because of this fear. We have been conditioned through nursing school and our careers to feel like it's our job to give everything we have, to be selfless, selfless, to lack a self, to sacrifice ourselves and our health and our families for this job. We're trained that way. Think about nursing school. Was there any space for a life? Was there any time for self-care? Was there any celebration of boundaries? Was there any conversation or education on shame or moral distress or the real risk to our mental and emotional health? What they are asking of you is impossible to sustain without injury to yourself. But that's the culture that is in nursing, that is healthcare. And it's left many of us circling the drain of despair, the drain of emotional overwhelm, burnout, and this psychological, moral, and traumatic injury. I could sit here with you and we could go through all of those assessments that I mentioned with you in the beginning and have you get a really clear picture of what category of suffering you may fall under. But I don't really feel like that's truly the best use of your time. However, I do encourage you to walk through those assessments when it feels right for you to get a gauge, to kind of like set the temperature where you're at. But when we boil it all down, the truth that really matters the most is that you're not in a place where you desire to be in your life. You're struggling. You may feel like you are drowning and failing in some or possibly many aspects of your life. You're stressed and overwhelmed and exhausted and unsure how much longer you can go on this way. This is the reality that we need to face head on and honestly. One thing as well that I think we need to get clear and to face is that what we are living through right now is the collapse of our healthcare system. There is a reason our healthcare system is failing and falling in response to this crisis, and that's because it was failing before. It had a weak foundation at best, and it was not built to withstand this kind of pressure. You and your colleagues are what have been keeping it from falling to the ground. You have been shouldering the weight of it all, holding it together and sacrificing yourself for it. And this is a scary truth to really acknowledge, because what happens if or when you let go, when you can't hold on anymore? And although this is a daunting and likely terrifying truth to acknowledge, I know you all see it too. You feel it, you're living through it. It can be really difficult to even talk about. And my heart breaks daily knowing the pain that everyone is going through and the pressure that you are shouldering. But if we can take a moment to face this reality together, we can see the options that are in front of us and see that we are actually not powerless, that we are not hopeless. None of what is happening is your fault, but your life is your responsibility. No one can change your life for you. It's up to you. And I'm not here to tell you what to do or what's right to do. Only you can decide that. What I see right now when I look in and I spend time with nurses from all walks of life is there's kind of three groups of nurses right now. Some of you are done. A recent study estimated that 60% of nurses are planning to leave their jobs, and a third of those are planning to leave nursing altogether, not to mention the ones that have been forced out. So that's at least 20% of you who are ready to walk away, but are also faced with navigating the uncertainty, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the fear, and the grief. And this all takes courage and strength. And it is so much easier to walk through this kind of journey with support and guidance. Don't go at this alone. This being in this place, I resonate with on a whole other level because I left. I decided that what was right for me was to go, that I was worth more and I deserved more than this was giving me, just as you do as well. But it was not an easy choice. I didn't just wake up and come to this place. And when I reflect on this stage of my life, I had been navigating it for many years to come to a place of clarity. But the greatest gift I gave myself as I navigated this decision was finding support. Realizing that we don't need to weather this or any storm alone. There are endless opportunities and options for all of us out here. Within nursing and outside of nursing, the opportunities are endless. You're not stuck. It doesn't matter how old you are or how long you've been in one role, no matter who you are or where you're at in life, you have options. We always have options. This is our life. We get to choose. But maybe you're not willing or not wanting to walk away. Maybe you're willing to go down with the ship. You're bravely staying in this storm, but you also need a ton of support. I've been in this place too, where I didn't see any other option. I chose to be a nurse. I chose this life. I felt committed. And honestly, when I think back, a part of me liked being the hero, or at least believing that I was one or that others saw me that way. But when I was in that place, I didn't know of or how to access the resources and the support I needed to help me find balance, or to heal any of the trauma, or to deal with the grief, and to learn how to manage the emotional overwhelm and the depression that I was feeling. I didn't know what I know now. And had I stayed in nursing, there's an honest possibility that I wouldn't be here anymore. That place was dark. That place of feeling so lost and hopeless, of feeling so alone and depressed that life didn't feel worth living, I've been there. And now, being on somewhat the other side of it, I vow to be there for those of you who are suffering and need a safe place to land, who need to rebuild hope. I also have connected with so many different resources of support over the couple years of doing this work with nurses that can be there for you as well. There is support out there. We can cultivate hope in even the most bleak of situations. I have proven this to myself over and over again. And the greatest resource available to you is connection and finding a safe, supportive place or a person to lean into. This storm that we're facing in healthcare in our world, it's far from over. And if you're struggling right now, it is critical for you to not wait any longer. Some of you, your life may depend on it. And I don't say that lightly. Hopelessness is one of the strongest predictors of suicide. If hopelessness is something that you feel, it is time for you to connect with someone to support you. I am here. There are so many others as well. Please don't wait. And then there's the remaining group of nurses. And this is those of you on the spectrum kind of between these other two groups. You're unsure. You're feeling all of the things. You recognize that you're suffering. You're dreading going to work. You feel drained, overwhelmed, emotional, angry, frustrated, depressed, anxious, and you're also confused and afraid of moving on. You're unclear of what's the right choice for you. This uncertainty is a difficult place to rest. And so sometimes we also in this place start to look for or develop ways of numbing out, ways to turn down the volume of the internal conflict that's going on. I feel you too. I know this place really well. I wrestled in this place for years, if not most of my career. Finding clarity is difficult, especially when you're barely surviving. But if you stay the course and find ways to clear away the muck and the trauma, you can find a place where you feel confident in the choices laid out to you and to make a decision. But really, no matter what group resonates with you, wherever you're at, it's all okay. It's all welcome and it all gets to belong. I work with women from all groups. And what's interesting to witness amongst so many other things is that no matter where we are at, we all need the same things. We all need to feel safe. We all need to feel heard and seen, to feel accepted, to feel valued, to feel cared for. When someone can give that to us, as well as ask us the hard questions and encourage us to go to the hard places, to dig through the muck with us, we can all find our ways into a clearer sky. And this actually is where I believe I shine, is guiding towards freedom, is course correcting your ship to align you with where it is that you want to go. It's a very messy journey. It's messy and it's difficult. So when I talk about the Nurse RX program, I often jokingly say, bring your boots and I'll bring the shovels, because we talk about the muck a lot. And the muck is where, it's that base of that canyon. It's all of the heavy stuff that we've maybe been avoiding or dismissing or even hiding from for a long time. If you recall, I said in the beginning there, on the hero's journey, we each feel a pull. So something is calling to you to create a change, but we dismiss or we ignore the calls until our body gets so loud we can't ignore it, or someone comes along and throws you a lifeline. In 2015, this happened for me. Someone opened the door and saw me, and they said, something to the effect of like, I see your struggle. I hear your pain. I resonate. I get it. You're not alone. But they also were reminding me that this is my life and I needed to step up and take it back. And they offered me all the tools, all the resources, introduced me to different practices. It wasn't easy to do, but walking through that door, it changed my entire life. It's, in hindsight, one of the simplest things that has ever happened, but it changed my whole life. And all it takes is one moment, one decision, and it can change your entire life. That 1 degree of a correction in the direction that you're going can open up an entirely new world for you. And I believe that I am here today to open that door for you. I believe I've been delivered to you because you have asked for help. I can't guarantee what's on the other side of this door for you, but I can guarantee you it'll be better than what's going on right now. I'm standing here with my door open and saying that I see you and I hear your pain, and you are not alone. You don't have to go at this alone. You can build back hope, and you have the power within you to take back control of your life. This is what's worked for me to help me climb out of that pit of despair and save myself, to turn my life that I was wanting to run from or end into a thriving life, instead of just merely surviving miserably, going through the motions, counting down the days, sometimes counting down the hours till I could just go to bed. And I'm inviting you right now to walk through that door with me, to put your hand up and say, I'm done. I deserve better. I'm ready. I'm willing to walk whatever path is through this door, because I know that I deserve better, that I am worth more. And what comes next on this hero's journey, if you choose to walk through this door with me, is you're stepping into the unknown. You're stepping off that cliff. You're stepping into uncertainty. But let's face it, as nurses, that's kind of what we do, right? We face uncertainty all the time. Just this time, you're going to be doing it for you. The journey and the path forward at this point, should you choose to make a commitment to taking this road, it's going to be full of a lot of trials and challenges. It's going to hold some difficult conversations and difficult, scary decisions, but it's also full of growth and new challenges and connections, new skills, new practices, and new perspectives. It will also take you through a period of grief as you let go of some of the old patterns, the old ways, and the parts of your identity that no longer are working for you. It is so, so critical that when you do this work and you take this journey, that you get support. Otherwise, it's like finding your way in the dark. But with support will come so many beautiful revelations, these new connections and relationships, gifts and transformation of your life into what you dream and desire it to be. To feel supported, to feel respected, to feel valued and appreciated, and to live your life in this harmony instead of the chaos and the anxiety and the fear. And we're not taking this whole journey right here now. That whole journey is probably for the rest of your life. Should you choose to walk this path, should you choose to say at some point, I deserve better, I'm worthy of more, and I am ready to take back control of my life. Today, we're going to walk through that door and take some first steps. First thing we need to come to grips with is that this is the long game. It's full of tiny steps over time. We didn't get to where we are today overnight, and we're not going to change it overnight. Those small steps, those small wins create motivation, and they cultivate hope and empowerment. This is the long game, the marathon. We have to think of it in those terms. Otherwise, the expectations we hold for ourselves will get so suffocating, and because we'll want it all to change so fast, and our impatience will get the best of us. We have to accept that in order to create the life we deserve, it takes a commitment for the long game. It's completely possible, but it takes a commitment. And if you're not ready to make that commitment today, that's okay too. No matter what, no matter where you're at or what decisions you make, it's all okay. So let's talk about some ways that you can get started coming down that canyon wall. I'm going to share what I call the 4 core non-negotiable practices for mental and emotional wellness. It's a big label, but essentially these are like the core 4 practices that no matter what program you take, no matter where you go for support or for resources, these will be included. They're essential. I'm also not going to encourage you to do them all, not at once, unless you are a rarity that is extremely motivated, as well as being as overwhelmed as you are, as well as energized and confident to do so. If that is you, then by all means, choose as many as you like. But for the vast majority of us, this is going to be one small step at a time, because it's a long game. And that's how we create sustainable, lasting change, is by one small, sometimes seemingly tedious step at a time. So the first one of the core 4 is mindfulness. So mindfulness is about being aware and awake to your life and all that's in it. It's about reconnecting with ourselves and being fully present in your life. Life before COVID was crazy busy. Life during COVID has been insanely chaotic psychologically. We are struggling with our internal landscape and the pain and the fear and anxiety of everything, that many of us are turning to mindless ways to escape, right? We're scrolling Facebook, we're watching endless Netflix, as well as possibly other behaviors and substances even, to try to turn down what's happening inside of us. And now, although these things can offer certain amounts of pleasure, for sure, they're also a very effective distraction from what's actually happening inside of you. This disconnection from ourselves and our experience is a problem. When we don't allow ourselves to experience the fullness of our emotions, or to listen to our body, to listen to those signals that our body is sending us, those signals tend to get louder and our emotions intensify. Your body is asking for your attention. And when we take time regularly and routinely to practice mindfulness, it's like building a muscle. And we're training ourselves for the stressful and challenging moments that are bound to happen in our life. Just as a runner would train for a marathon, we need to train ourselves for the events that happen in our life that create stress and create potential trauma. The more we train and practice, then the more prepared we are for when those things happen. And so we do this by attending to our breath, noticing our body, noticing what's happening, learning how to widen the lens and explore with our senses and bring us back into the presence, which is where life is happening. And the more we practice this, the quicker we can access this capacity to bring ourselves back when we are stressed, in those acute moments of stress. So I'll guide you through a quick one right now. And it's so simple, and it's something that you can do in like a minute or less. So you can do it at any point. You can be working, you can be at home, it doesn't matter. You can be at the grocery store. Anytime you feel like you're being triggered, stress is coming into your body, right? Maybe your heart starts to race, maybe you start to feel shaky, you start to feel hot, maybe sweaty. You can engage these practices, but in order to be quicker to bring them on board, you have to practice. That's why they're called practices, because you have to practice, right? And so what you'll do, just your eyes will be open, right? You can close your eyes too, but I'm going to guide you through it right at this moment. So I want you first to notice your breathing. Notice right now the quality of your breath. Is it shallow? Is it deep? Is it tense? Does it feel restricted or contracted? Or does it feel open and flow? Are you breathing into your chest or your belly? Just notice it and start to take deeper breaths, allowing your belly to expand. As you start to deepen those breaths, you might count. You might inhale for 4 seconds, pause for a moment at the top, and exhale for 6 seconds. But start to slow your breath and control your breath. The exhale is just as important as that inhale. Okay, the exhale starts to bring your relaxed nervous system online. All right, so inhaling slowly, exhaling slowly, just as easy as that. That could be what you do. Your breath is your quickest route back to the present. We get trapped in our minds and the stories that are playing out and the fears and the worries that are happening. And it takes us out of our life. Engaging and noticing your breath helps to bring you back. You can take it an even deeper level and start to engage your senses as well. Noticing what you see, naming 3 or 4 or 5 things that you see. What do you hear? Right now, you can just note those things. What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? What do you feel on your skin? Temperature, sensation. Engaging your senses as well, it brings you back into the present. We can get so seduced by fear and anxiety. And when that happens, it's like our perspective narrows and our vision narrows, and everything that floods up in our body as our nervous system gets activated and we become dysregulated. When we notice that this is happening to us, when we're able to catch it, you can practice these super simple and super quick little techniques to bring yourself back into the present, calm your nervous system, and remain in control, so that you can also have clarity and control as you respond to those situations. And it doesn't take long to do. It can take a few seconds actually to experience the relief and the space that is created when you pay attention to your breath. But we can't just do it once. It's a practice. So sometimes people find it helpful to like set a time, an alarm in their phone, maybe something that goes off every hour. Or if you have one of those Apple watches, to set that so that it alarms or it gives you a little notification. Just can say something like breathe, just so it reminds you. I encourage all my clients to put like breathe stickers or sticky notes all over their house and their car, so that no matter where you go, there's something that will remind you to breathe. Breathing brings you back. It's happening automatically, but when we attend to it, when we bring our awareness and our attention to our breath, it brings you back. It's one of the simplest things, but the most effective things that you can practice. Okay, so number 2 of the core 4 is movement. Now, I'm not encouraging you all to go dust off your treadmills or to go join a gym or anything like that, unless you want to. But movement is our body's language, and we need to find ways to move our body, not just for the physical health benefits, but also for the mental and emotional benefits that come with it and the stress relief that comes with movement. And it's important when we're talking about movement. I don't call it exercise, because in my mind, that is the intention of it, is to move my, to become physically fit. But when I am engaging in movement, I have found more benefits when I set the intention to connect with my body, to move my body in a way of unlocking and unstucking unstucking any kind of trapped or heavy or tense or contracted feelings and experiences. When we think of emotions, you can think of it as energy in motion. But if we don't allow ourselves to feel those things in the moment when they happen, they get stuck. If I go through my entire day and I am exposed to all these different situations that make me feel sad, they make me feel angry, they make me feel frustrated, they make me feel shame, guilt, label it all of the feelings that get triggered and brought up throughout the course of a day, if I don't do something to acknowledge those feelings and to release the emotional energy of that, then they become stuck in my body, and then they become much more easily triggered. So the next day I'm more and more triggered. Before you know it, years later, you're just triggered all the time. So movement helps you to release and to process that stress, to digest what's happened for you that day. So intentional movement is really the key, and finding something that you enjoy, finding something that you feel motivated and excited to do. If your treadmill is like collecting dust and is like a coat hanger in your house, it's probably because you don't super enjoy doing it. Right? I'm literally out of the corner of my eye can see our exercise machine, and I haven't used it in years because that's not what I enjoy. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy doing things with friends. I enjoy being guided in my movement. I enjoy doing different things with my movement, not just the same repetitive action. So asking yourself, what are the things about movement that I enjoy, and how can I integrate some of those pieces so that I am more motivated to do it? Okay. And it can be some things as simple as dancing. It can be going for a walk. There's so many different ways to move our body. We have to just start thinking about, what is it that I want to do? What would I feel motivated to do? And if I'm not doing it, why not? Because that can help to indicate to you where there are some areas where you could create a change, right? If I don't do it because I don't like to exercise or I don't like to move alone, then I'm going to look for something I can do with friends, or I'm going to join a class, right? Something that motivates me. So at the other side of this too is to choose something that you feel confident that you'll do, and to set yourself up for success. To choose something that feels realistic for you. If you're not a runner, don't say that I'm going to start running for 20 minutes every single day. That doesn't sound to me, I mean, I don't want to assume, but for most of us, that's going to be an unrealistic goal. Okay, so but if maybe running is a goal for you, set that as a long term and start with just walking. Start with maybe shorter runs and working your way up to this. Again, I just go back to it all the time because it's so essential and critical to us to create sustainable change in our life. We have to take small steps along the way, small steps, and be as realistic and reasonable with ourselves as possible to really set ourselves up for success. Okay, so number 3 is pleasure. So pleasure. This, this is where they talk about self-care, but I refer to it as leaning into pleasure and the yes of your life, the things that light you up. And sometimes we don't even know what this is anymore. I like to think of life as having a yes and a no feeling. No for me is things like cleaning or doing paperwork. Those are not pleasure-filled things for me. I don't enjoy them. Walking outside, staring at the moon and the stars, having a bonfire, playing with my dogs or my kids, watching movies, those kinds of things bring me the yes feelings, the stuff that I feel lit about. And every day, at this stage of my life, every day I try to do at least one thing that will fill my cup, at least one thing. Some years ago, 5 years ago now, maybe 6, I was introduced to the practice or the exercise of creating a pleasure list. And when the person told me to create this list, I couldn't even come up with 3 things. I did come up with 3 things, but it was a stretch. I didn't even know what brought me joy anymore. My life had gone so far in a different direction where it was just filled with doing things for other people, with working, with providing for my home, with all of these expectations and all these things that had to do with other people and responsibilities. And I was not even in the equation. I didn't even know what filled me up anymore. But I was encouraged to do the list. So I wrote the list. I had 3 things on it. And now today, I keep it right beside me. My list is over 50 long. And I can turn to that at any point if I feel stuck on what I could do for myself. It is important for you to do things that fill you up, to do things that bring you joy, that bring a smile to your face, that bring you ease in your life. They don't have to be big things. It doesn't have to be like going for a manicure, going for a massage, or going to the spa. Those are like some of the big typical things that, sometimes people will say. But it can be things like making your bed. It can be setting the table. It could be buying yourself some flowers. It could be hot tea and a warm blanket. It could be sleeping in, taking a nap. It could be wearing your pajamas to the store. It could be sitting by the water or sitting in a field. It can be anything, but as long as it makes you feel good, as long as it makes you feel cared for and nourished and joyful. So I'm encouraging you all to make a list. And if you have a paper in front of you right now, write the list right now, because we'll forget. You'll move on from this at the end when it's over and you'll forget. So we need more joy and more laughter and more ease in our lives. So make your list and commit to one thing a day, one thing for you. And if you're on those really tough days, you could double up or even triple up, right? Sometimes we need that. Sometimes the week goes by and we need to stockpile our joy and our goodness into one day. And now, although that's not like the top recommendation, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. So do that. All right, number 4 is journaling. So don't roll your eyes at me. There's probably a lot of people here that love to journal. I resisted it for a long time. I used to just journal PRN and until I created a practice. And now it is one of my go-tos when I need to get something out. And I actually have less to get out because I journal every single day. Journaling is a way to express ourselves or to say things that maybe we can't say out loud, or we don't feel good about saying out loud, or we're not ready to say to other people. You can even use it in the form of a letter. We can use our journal as an outlet for frustration, for sadness, for grief, for fear, our worries. We can use our journal to answer questions that we want to find clarity with, to help us understand who the heck we are under all these layers of stress and grief and fear, to think about the aspects of life that are going well, to think about the parts of life that are not going well and start to tease them out, to start to really dig through them. Your journal can become a very safe place for you to unload all of the baggage that we are carrying with us on a daily basis. And so when I think about journaling, one of the hardest parts for me was integrating it into a consistent pattern. I would journal when I felt a need, but I couldn't make it consistent until I started to think of like, what is consistent in my life? And so, maybe this for you is in the car after your shift or before you go into the house. Maybe it's first thing in the morning with your coffee. Maybe it's at night before the TV goes on. Try to think of something that is consistent already in your life and see if there's a way that you could just have your journal right there. And if you're stuck on what to write, you can Google. There's so many different journaling prompts out there that you can use, or you just dump or just talk about one experience of the day. You can also do a gratitude journal where you're just writing about all the things that you're grateful for. You can do a self-celebration journal where you're celebrating yourself and all the different things that you've done that day, focusing your attention on those wins instead of the I didn't get this done and all of the negativity that we can spiral into. Okay, so those are the core four. I know I've talked about a lot already today, and I want you to think about those four pieces and consider one. Ask yourself, which one is standing out to me? Which one do I want to take on? And then create a plan for yourself. Be as specific as possible and create a step that you are willing to take. Okay, so if you choose journaling, I'm going to journal and I'm going to put my journal beside my chair at night, and before the TV goes on, I'm going to write one paragraph at least. So create an action step. But then I also want to talk about, just before we go, is that these pieces that I've just discussed with you, they're not earth-shattering kind of things that you don't already know. I'm not sharing anything with you that you can't read in a Google search. But the big question is, why aren't we doing it? Right? We know that these pieces will help us. Why aren't we doing them? Sometimes we're just so exhausted, we don't feel motivated, we just feel so miserable, we don't want to do anything. There's this overwhelm, so how can I add in anything else? Or a busyness that we just aren't making the space for something else. Which is why there's actually 5 non-negotiable items on my list, and this is, as I've said already a few times, possibly the most critical piece, which is to find support. We aren't meant to weather the storm alone. We are social beings wired for connection. We need each other, and we need people who get it. I don't just tell you all this stuff because I think it's magical cures and that it's easy stuff to implement. It's not. We're living in an extraordinary time. But whether you believe this or not, we are all meant to be right here in this. We were chosen to weather this storm. And I remind myself every day of the important role that I'm playing in this critical time in our history, to really step up and show up for all of you, to inspire hope, to help you rebuild hope, and to encourage you that you don't have to go down with this ship. Even if you choose to stay on it, you don't have to go down with it. You're all here right now on this call with me for a reason, because this is it. It's time for you to take your life back. It's time. I know that you hear me. I know that you hear me. And I want you to really hear this and let my words course through your body. You are worth more than this. The journey is not going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be this way. If I can find my way through all of the mess and the muck that I have explored and kind of described to you, which is just a fragment of my story. But if I can find my way through all of it and realize that I'm not intended to wake up every day dreading and hating my life, if I can do it, so can you. I'm no different. It takes small steps forward, and it takes support. And trust me, if you just walk through this doorway and start, years from now, you'll look back and you won't even be able to recognize everything that has evolved and like who you've become by doing this work, by taking those deep looks at yourself. So as a bonus for sticking it out, for those of you that are still here with me, I wanted to invite you also to book some one-on-one time with me. So this is an offer to you, and it's an opportunity for us to dig in deeper into what is happening for you and what your individual struggles are and what things are looking like for you. I put there into the chat the link. You can go ahead and book a time for you. And also it's an opportunity for us to explore if the Nurse RX program is the right opportunity for you. So at this point, you know, if you feel complete and you're ready to go, I just want to really thank you for being here, for taking the time, for listening. And I will also share that, you know, I talk a lot, and so these are like my opportunities to talk. But in the program, it is more about engaging and practices and exercises and sharing and creating change together. And so I wanted to take a few minutes here too. If you feel like you'd like to stay, please do. And if you have other questions about the Nurse RX program, go ahead and throw it into the chat. But I'd like to just take a few minutes to answer some of the most commonly asked questions that people do have for me about the program. And if you're, like, as I said, if you feel like it's time for you to go, I just want to say thank you for being here. And I really do honor your time. And if you have any questions or anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find our Facebook group, Surviving Nursing, if you haven't joined that yet. As well, if you head to my website, which is sandrapaynecoach.com, there is the link to my podcast, which is called End the Silence, and it's stories of nurses, real life, raw, vulnerable nurses sharing their stories about their struggles in nursing, but also their successes. And it has been a really transformative experience for me to provide the platform for those stories, but also for the women who are sharing them, as well as to those who are listening to them. It is a really, it's a really profound thing for us to recognize our shared connection and our shared humanity, particularly in this profession, as we move through the intense and heavy difficulties that are out there. So as I said, to help you kind of prepare for your session with me, or if maybe you just have some questions and you want to hear a little bit more about the program, I'm just going to take a few minutes now to answer some of those questions. And so, you know, the first question, of course, is kind of like, what is the Nurse RX program all about? Like, what's the time commitment? How long does this go for? What do I have to say I'm in for? So essentially, the initial program with Nurse RX is a 3-month program. It's 12 weeks. And in those 12 weeks, each week there is a group call where we circle up together. It's a small cohort of women, and there's usually 6 to 10. 10 is the most. 8 is generally where we end up landing. But it's a small group of women, and we circle up every week. And in those group sessions, you learn. So there is some aspect of me teaching. We engage in different practices and exercises together. Sometimes we journal together. We are always moving. Every single call we move, whether it's dance or it's other practices that I'm introducing. And we share and we connect and we talk about our own experiences and we support each other. As well, there is a weekly opportunity for small group coaching. And so coaching is, you know, for some people, this is a new idea. It's not counseling, although there's definitely overlap. But as nurses, we all have overlapped into counseling at some point in our career. And but coaching is different in a respect of, like, it's sharing a ton of tools and exercises and resources so that you can build your toolkit. And it's also about action. It's about taking steps. And so those weekly small group coaching sessions are really intended to create momentum. So as you're moving forward throughout the program and you're creating goals and you're taking those steps. It's a chance to every week kind of reset and be like, okay, where did I get to? Where am I at right now? What's the next step? What got in my way? And how can I move forward? And those sessions are not recorded. The group sessions where we are teaching and doing different practices and exercises, those calls are recorded. So if you can't attend them, you can catch the recording. So you'll still learn that weekly content and that weekly practice so that you can engage in it afterwards. But the small groups coaching sessions are not recorded. It's really an opportunity for us to dive deep and to bear witness to other women who are sharing their stories and sharing their pain. And whether you are volunteering to be coached in those sessions or you are just observing, what I have witnessed, and I know there's some people here who have been a part of that, is quite magical. And it just really, again, brings us back to that shared human experience where we can see, so many things that resonate in someone else's story that we can feel in our own. And that's something you can't do that without other human beings. So it's a powerful aspect of the group work. And sometimes people, they shy away from the program because of the group work. And I get that on so many levels. And a part of it is, what we talked about already is like this fear-based culture in nursing, and how it's kind of like, you or me, it's a dog eat dog. It can be very competitive. It can be very uneasy and untrusting in our profession. And so but the reason that I do a group program is because there is a incredible spark that happens in our nervous system when we are with other people. So no matter how much you resist, eventually that is something that just happens by being with other people. Your nervous system regulates in the energy that is exchanged. And I witness women in this program about week 4 of the 12 weeks, some earlier and some later, but approximately like the week 4 is the guard starts to drop. We start to lay down our swords and be more authentic and more real and more open and honest about what we're going through. And like I said, some are before and some are later, but and it doesn't matter where you land on that. It's just that when that happens, sparks, fireworks, magic unfolds. And I have a hard time really articulating even how incredible it is to witness what happens in a group. I participated in a group program that ran over 9 months in 2020. And at the end of it, I grieved because I realized that actually, I didn't know how I survived without it, because that group became a lifeline for me. It became a pillar. Every single week, I knew I had a safe place to turn. I knew that no matter how shitty the rest of the week was, I had a place to come where I could just be me, where I could leave all of the other shit behind and I could be me, and I was celebrated for it. I was welcomed in every aspect of what I brought. All of my emotions, all of my pain, all of my questions, everything. It didn't matter where I was at, it was welcomed. And that's what I strive to create in the group, is a safe place for us to just be who we are. And that is a rare thing in this world. So another question people have also is like, what else is included in the program? So in addition to what I just explained about the group aspect, there's also individual sessions where we dive deeper into some of your personal challenges and explore some more advanced trauma and mindset techniques that I have taken training in. We also have a Telegram chat. So that is a place where we can connect in between the sessions, where we can share what's happening. We can share our successes and our challenges and support each other. Also, everything is housed in a secure online platform where I put the recordings of the calls. There's also weekly meditations that are recorded for you so that you can use those in your practice. There's other exercises and videos and different resources you can print off. There's also a weekly Kundalini yoga practice that I'm a certified Kundalini yoga teacher. And so there is a practice, a physical movement practice that integrates with the work that we're doing in the group and the content of that week. You may be thinking, what is Kundalini yoga? And that's okay. It's not something that a lot of people know a lot about. It's not like our traditional yoga where, like a vinyasa or a flow type of yoga. It's a yoga that is specifically, it's the yoga of your potential. It's the yoga of energy release. It uses movements in a repetitive way over a period of time that start to unlock the stuck energy and the stuck emotions that are trapped inside of us. And so we would get into a movement or a posture, and we would just repeat it over and over and over with an intentional, forceful breath with our eyes closed, as we just really allow what's trapped and wound up inside of us to start to flow and to start to move so that we can find that release. Another practice that I incorporate into the one-on-ones, as well as some smaller practices that we put into the group sessions, is called Aroma Freedom. This is also something I took certification in, and it is really designed to it uses essential oils, but also a process where we are accessing what's called a memory complex, which is a connection between our doubtful mind, our critical mind, our judgmental mind. And so the thoughts that we have in our head, as well as our feelings, our emotions, and our physical sensations of those emotions, and how it connects to an experience, whether that experience is in the past, in the present, or it's in the future. And we use these processes and these techniques to help us to find clarity, to help us to shift our mindset and our belief systems, to create beliefs and mindset that work for us, that are working in the direction that we want our life to go in, instead of the doubtful, critical places that kind of keep us stuck and keep us limited in what we feel we can do with our life. And so you get to experience a full aroma freedom in the one-on-ones, and then we have other practices that I introduce in the group that you can do as a self-guided practice. Of course, one of the other questions for people is, will this work for me? Right? Will this work for me? And this is a great question, because I think it really speaks to some of that mindset and the self-doubt that we hold for ourselves. And I can't guarantee anybody what you'll experience. I can tell you everything, down to the detail, what's included in the program, what we talk about, what kind of content, practices, tools, exercises, all of it that I incorporate, which, as I said, is program development was kind of my jam, and the program is robust. There is a ton of content, and it's open there for you for life. They say on Thinkific, they say that content is there for life. I'm not attached to that, but at the same time, it's there for you. So even if you don't get through every single thing in those 12 weeks, you can go back. You can go back to the meditations as many times as you want. You can go back to the yoga, you can go back to the videos, and even watch the recordings of the group calls. So all of that is there for you. And when it comes to that question of, will this work for me? It's like, I can't guarantee you what is going to happen. But as I said before, I can guarantee that it will be better than what you're going through right now, that you will learn and you will explore and you will develop in ways that are specific to you, and also specific to you as far as where you're at in your life and the capacity that you have to show up for the different things that are happening in the group. Everybody is at a different phase of life. And so if your life is really busy and chaotic and hectic and not a lot of time, you may not engage in all of the aspects. And so what you pull out of the program is going to be different than someone who is able to, attend everything and is able to do all of the practices and everything. But I can't predict that either. So what benefits come from whatever you're able to invest is really individual. But the only thing I can absolutely guarantee is that it will be better than where you're at right now. There is so much to be to be learned, and all of that becomes like your toolkit. It becomes these resources that you can access even after the program is done. And when we think about, trauma practice, and this is something I dig a lot into, we need to build our internal resources so that we can access those pieces when we are stressed, when we are triggered, when we are in difficult situations. But we also need the external resources, which is, like I talked about, that safe place where we can be who we are, where we don't have to be guarded and we don't have to be shielded because of trust or because of fear or because of shame or stigma or any of that. And so when we can put those two pieces together, we can find a real balance in how we're able to show up in life. It doesn't mean that life gets easy, because the shit that's happening in our world, it's not going away. None of those things are going away. But what we have control of is ourselves. And we have the capacity to make decisions and to choose how we want to move forward. So the Nurse RX program that I developed is really about giving you and helping you to resource yourself, giving you resources, but also helping you to resource yourself so that you can dig back in and find that internal strength and that belief in yourself, that you can move toward anything that it is that you want. So I'm going to leave it at that. If there is any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out or to send me an email. I'll pop that link back in the chat again if anybody would like to book a session with me, and we can dig in to what's happening for you, as well as just see if this is the right choice. The next group is going to be starting into the second week of April, and we can talk about that as well. So again, I want to really just thank you all for being here and for taking your time and for your attention. And I trust and also hope that there was something that resonated for you, and that you'll leave today with at least one action step that you can take for yourself. And if anything, a spark that there is potential for change, that you are not stuck in this space that you feel you are in right now, that there is hope for another way. So again, you can find me online, Sandra Payne Wellness, or my website, sandrapaynecoach.com, the Surviving Nursing Facebook group, and check out the podcast, Endless Silence, Stories of Nurses. And I wish you all just a beautiful day. And before we transition, I always like to just take a deep breath together. Everyone can join me, a deep breath in through your nose. And letting it all go. One more time, deep breath in. And letting it all go. Thank you so much. Have a great day.